So, Brett and Mike, I had a girl. She was in ninth grade. I was coaching her club team. She was an awesome player. I mean, one of the best kids to come out of the area. And I'm just a Division III men's coach, and I'm used to our timeline. I'm an assistant coach at the time, and I get a call while this girl's in ninth grade, and I mean, I think it was October, November, and it was from the Division I, a Power 5 school, giving me a buzz about this girl, and they want to know about her, and they're talking to me about her, and I mean, I knew the timeline was earlier for girls, but I was really taken aback. I mean, the reality is, I mean, it may be 5 to 6 years before they even think about using her, but they are super interested. They want to jump on her, and I was asking the coach about it, and the coach was kind of like, "Well, she's one of the best in the country. It's either I get her or I'm going to lose her to a UConn or a UNC, like a big dog." And I'm like, "Oh, I guess that makes sense." And so I found that super interesting. I know the timeline for girls is so much earlier, but this girl's in her first semester of high school, years before she even puts on a uniform for college. And I just was kind of like completely shocked that it happens like that. But, I get it's the nature of the business. So I don't know if you guys might be able to kind of chat on that and maybe help us explain why the women's side is so much quicker than the men's side, and specifically Division I versus Division III too.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, Mike probably has some interesting stories coming because Mike's been across different Division 1s and Division 3s and higher levels than I'm at Manhattan. So I'll be interested to hear what his takes are. But I mean, so my thoughts are, there's kind of general like why is the women's game faster? There's more programs and there's more money, right? So there's two things. I don't know if those are automatically the first two things, but there's what 150-ish more programs, Division 1 programs than on the men's side.
Mhm.
Um, Rosters are generally larger to balance out Title IX numbers, especially if you're a football school, right? You've got 100 to 120 participating males. You need to balance that out. Female participation, so rosters become larger, and men get 9.9 scholarships, and women get 14. So all of those things tend to more spots in general, more money to put around. That leads into it. Girls hit puberty faster, right? So they hit, their peak, physicality earlier, where the boys are certainly much later in the process, where it's hard to, you can look at a 13 or 14-year-old boy and, he could look like a 10-year-old boy, right? But there's a whole lot more 14, 15-year-old girls who look like 20-year-old women. So that's part of it. You get a sense of where they are already. Um, and then, I mean, there is a sense of keeping up with the Joneses. If you're on a great team, you're on a very strong team, and people are committing early, or they're already talking to coaches. There's the fear of, it's a big financial move. It's a big. If I don't go now, maybe I won't get any money, and nobody else will like me. I better better make a decision right now. But, so I think all of that, comes into it, and they're super eager. I mean, if they're very good and they're getting recruited by Power 5 schools, and the Power 5 schools are kind of, maybe we'll get into this a little bit, maybe like going around some rules or something along those lines to reach out and talk to them, then you feel wanted. Who doesn't want to feel wanted, and who doesn't want to feel wanted by big time, by the
Sure.
by the highest level as well? So um, I think all of that plays into it.
I'd add in, Brendan made such a great point. A couple areas that, besides keeping up with the Joneses, I do think that there's a stance now that was not the play 7 years ago. The transfer portal has privatized the ability, and that was prior to having the portal. If someone were to transfer, where they were go, and so I think that might be a little bit of a scapegoat for players and or clubs that kind of use not that I heard this, might certainly say if it doesn't work out, you can on the portal. And so I think that's where we deal with that, plus deal with a generation that we're all trying to the lack of instant gratification that our players, student athletes, club players want. And so when that does happen with one player on the club team, obviously that really, I think, sends a shockwave that, for Coach Brandon and I, together on the club side, We very much try to recommend that every player has their own path. It's their own journey. Much say that it's really tough to stomach. And so I think that one to commit a false sense of security that they're not in the right place, because when every program has different needs.
Yeah. Cheese, let me just kind of reset it so we can introduce Brendan and Mike real quick.
Sure.
So we have Brendan Lawler, who is the head coach at Manhattan College, head women's coach at Manhattan College. Been there quite a while now at this point. So I'm sure the tenure there, I guess I shouldn't use the word tenure in the college environment. I don't know how that works for athletics, but brings a unique perspective being at a program for so long. And then we will also welcome Mike Eckberg, who is the head women's coach at State University of New York, New Paltz. Is that the way you say New Paltz? Okay. And you guys, New Paul?
like Paltz.
Oh, New Paltz. Gotcha. So you guys are obviously Manhattan colleges. Is it actually in Manhattan, or is it just outside of Manhattan?
Careful. I don't know how many people are interested in a history lesson, but it started in Manhattan. 1853, it was founded on the island of Manhattan, and I'm going to get this date wrong, somewhere in the early 1900s, before 1920, I think. It moved up to, we basically just moved a few miles north, but across a tiny bit of the river, and now it's actually the most northern part of the Bronx, where it's about a mile from Manhattan now, but they just wanted to expand back then, so that's the history of Manhattan and Bronx.
Cool. And then New Paltz is just up the road a bit. How far north is it? I looked at it on a map, but how far are you outside the city?
About an hour and a half, give or take, depending on how far you how much traffic you get. But off the throughway. Albany.
Beautiful town. Beautiful small little town up there.
Awesome.
And so you guys, so I know that Cheese here, Justin Chezem, we call him Cheese for, his last name. But anyway, I know that he works pretty closely with William and Mary. Like when they're recruiting kids, they end up recruiting a lot of the same events and that sort of thing. Are you guys kind of have that same relationship where you're at the same events and cross paths a lot and talk about kids a lot?
So Mike and I coach in the same club together. So that's so just in terms of our teams being at a lot of those events, then yeah, we're at the same. But I think we would be anyway. I think we're both generally recruiting. I mean, Mike will tell you, but recruiting out of the state of New York for state school reasons. But yeah, in the region, we're mostly. I mean, I'll tell everybody, I don't care where you're from. We've got a player on a team right now from Okinawa. Dad happened to be from Connecticut. So that works itself out. If you can play and you're interested, then I'm interested. But yeah, mostly it's.
Go ahead, Cheese.
Is that an American from Okinawa, like a military kid?
So I would have figured that also, but no. I mean, so she is American. She has an American passport. She's got a Japanese passport also, though. Her father is from Connecticut. Went over there to teach, and if I get the story right, he met his wife and stayed there. And So Raina came over here and played. She had two older brothers who went and played at Holy Cross and Valpo. So all three have come over here and played.
Some pedigree there.
She doesn't count as an international on our roster, she lived in Okinawa her entire life.
Wow. I spent 3 years there. My dad was a Marine. I spent 3 years in Okinawa as a little kid.
Oh, okay.
It's cool. It's neat out there. Whole different world, of course.
It looks like paradise.
Oh, yeah. Well, jumping back into kind of what we were talking about earlier, you'd mentioned a few things, and I just want to confirm that you think that this is specifically on the Division I, but I guess the Division III women's side. Do you think that all of the women's timelines are pretty similar across sports, or is it more pronounced in soccer? I mean, what are your thoughts there?
I think there is. So before our rule changed and we created that the dead period in the middle of December to January, or December to January, and not being able to, you're not really supposed to contact anybody, club or player until June 15, right? After their sophomore year. So that helps slow it down a little bit. COVID slowed it down just because no one was playing and we couldn't get out there, right? And I think, I've personally slowed down. I think there's still a ton of development physically, mentally, maturation wise that goes on between sophomore year. Like our group that's about to be seniors, a good number of them committed at the end of their sophomore year before the rule change. And, they're still here, but two of them transferred. They two of them left to go be nurses, and we just didn't have a nursing program. They knew that, but they changed their mind. They wanted to be a nurse. So
right.
That changed over that time period. So even just like non-soccer things can greatly change. Changing majors is, about as common as could be. So that can be that way also. But I think some of us smaller schools, the mid majors and a little bit below have slowed down a little bit. I think maybe the portal has allowed us to do that a little bit too, because if there's like this like reshuffling of maybe I shouldn't have gone to a Power 5, I should have went to like the CAA, and then maybe people in the CAA should have come down to like Patriot or the MAC or the NEC, and maybe people who are 20 to 25 to 30 in the MAC, should have went to a different level, and that kind of reshuffles. And now, I mean, especially as somebody like myself who's got a limited scholarship budget, we're not fully funded. I'd rather look at somebody's stats after freshman year and say, this person played in 10 games as a freshman at a conference level that's higher than ours. I'd much rather invest in that person than in, a 16-year-old. It's just more certain. Right. So I think that's allowed it to happen as well. And the way the numbers in the portal, you certainly know that people are going to be moving. Where in the past you'd have to just sit around and wait unless you knew somebody. Now it's a free agency, right? Who hits the market and you can go out there and the way we all share film, it's not even just stats, right? I can go get film of them against college level players instead of against their, a midweek high school game, which is sometimes what you get.
Yeah, I think that you said something, you talked about how the most common reason that girls might change their mind or transfer would be because of majors. And I mean, going back to that girl that I was talking about when she was in ninth grade, I mean, I that was the only year I coached her, but I kept a relationship with her until she left. And I mean, she was a completely different kid just 2 years later.
Right.
And I mean, these kids that I recruit as juniors, I mean, they're completely different kids just 6 months later going into their senior year. And I always have a joke with my players that during their exit meeting their sophomore year, I always ask them, how do you think you are today versus how you are when you checked in? And they're laughing. I mean, these kids, they change so much. And, how does that affect the recruiting process when like, okay, I'm getting this kid, she's 15, 16 or whatever, and she's about to have a car. Her social life's going to change a little bit. She's going into her senior year of college. And I mean, interests change dramatically at that age. And, I mean, yeah, they like you. They want to play soccer in college. They like your school, but all of a sudden I've got these other 10 things on my mind. And, not next thing you know, you've lost 3 or 4 of your recruits going into a certain class. And I mean, how do you handle that? Or how do you try to combat that? I mean, what's the process there to keep a kid committed for that time, especially one that hasn't signed a sheet of paper that's getting her some money?
So it can be tricky. Some of it is starting the culture and keeping the communication open, right? So it's, trying to get them. I like players to meet our recruits to meet our players, right? And to, follow each other on Instagram and, get each other's cell phones. So they're no longer coaching, talking to me, because we'll talk to, the mid 40-year-old man versus their future teammates. Like, let's get them doing that so they feel connected kind of early. I think that's important. But, I joke all the time based on what you just said there, right? Like, how random is all of this? Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows who's going to get hurt? Who's going to fall out of love with the game? Who's going to hit a growth spurt and take off? And, because it's not like development's not linear, right? Right. It goes up and down or stays low and then it hops up. So, I mean, my wife gets mad at me every year. What do you think of the freshman? Who's going to be what? I said, we'll see. She goes, I know you're going to say we'll see, but can you just tell me? I'm like, we'll see. We'll see how they get when they get in here, when they're away from home and they're playing against 22-year-old women who are about to join the real world, that are looking for real jobs, and they're not 6 months away from the senior prom, right? Like, that's different. We'll see. You're hopeful. But before we got on here, we were watching our incoming freshmen's highlight films. Just to like, whether here in a week, let's remind ourselves what they look like, and we're excited, but what we still have to.
Yeah, I would say that for us at SUNY New Paltz, it's a little bit of a sweet spot because we, from a recruit, looking at some younger players, but I think recruiting campus, we do have one there where we unofficial or official, going into the midway through of their junior year, talking to nor is there only dealt with this once in my 7 New Paltz that I've actually so the timetable is not long well. So obviously you're out there, you're at New Paltz or else, but that is one kind of really we're dealing with.
So I was going to jump into something else. Like you guys are getting ready to start your new seasons, and so what do you guys tell your existing players? Like, what's their program like over the summer? What do you encourage them to do? And then incoming players, what's expected of them? How are they expected to show up the first day, and that sort of thing? Like, just as a recruit is listening to this, what can they expect? As a standard for them to uphold as they come in to become a college player.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of players don't necessarily know what they're getting into. And that's that line is something I use a lot at the club or anybody that I'm talking to. Like, literally just put it. Do you know what you're getting into? Do you know what, like, do you just think it would be cool, or are you aware of the competition level, the physical demands, what this becomes all about? Because this is generally much more so about winning and getting a team ready to win, right? Because our players are about to come in on Monday and we've got 9 practices before our first game, right? Or whatever it is, 10 or 11 before our first game. That's not all that much time to get people on the same page tactically and with the principles you want to put in. It's very, very difficult. So what do we expect of them? For me, they have to come in fit, right? They probably heard that a million times. We certainly don't have enough time in preseason to get them fit. They have to come in. We give everybody a copy of the yo-yo test that we're running, the yo-yo intermittent recovery test. Every school probably runs some sort of different version of whatever their fitness test is going to be. I'm very clear of this is the standard you have to reach. It's the first thing we're going to do on the field. If you pass it, we're going to go play soccer. And if you don't, we'll take a look at how close you are, but you're certainly not playing in games until you pass it. And when we start doing tactical, bigger picture type things, I'm not going to give you reps because you're not in the rotation right now because you're not fitness eligible to play. So we give them a summer fitness packet. It technically has every day of the summer laid out, but it's really more of a guide than it is like you must do this because, if they're working, they're doing an internship and they're playing a summer league, which again, we encourage them to do. So they're playing, they have to, adjust that, right? So if they're going on vacation for the weekend, then that fits in their off days, great. But if not, then maybe their off days are Tuesday and Thursday. But anyway, so I'm getting a little bit too much into the weeds there. But for me, they have to come in. They don't have to come in like peak fitness, and that's not what our standard is. But it's fitness that's going to allow us to compete right away. And like I said, I'm not a guy who's huge on strength. My strength stuff is about them remaining healthy. So they're strong enough to be fit. I joke I've never looked down the bench and decided who to put in based on what their squat numbers were or their bench press numbers were. Like, I've seen people with big squat numbers try and shield the ball standing straight up on one leg, and anybody can push them around. So, I want to get into playing, but we still have to be fit enough to do the job. So, and it's tricky for incoming freshmen too, right? Like, depending on where they are in the geographically in the country, they might be in their high school season up until June. Their high school season might end in November, and now they're with their club team, but depending on the level of their club team, they haven't been doing much in May and June. And, so it's very kind of tricky, but my advice to any of them is play, make sure you're playing. because, we're not a team of cross country runners as much as we talk about fitness. Like, you still got to be able to play. So to find that balance of soccer specific fitness is difficult. Because there's nothing that prepares you. I always say it's like telling a kid that not to touch a hot stove. Whoop, sorry, not moving around enough in here. Hope that doesn't ruin the podcast for you. Like, you can tell a little kid not to touch that because you're going to get burnt, but they don't know until they do it, right? You can only tell somebody how fast and how physical and all this kind of stuff is, but until they step on the field and that 22-year-old, 50-year freshman or senior hits them unapologetically, it wakes you up pretty quick.
I'll tell you, I always I talk to our spring sport guys all the time, and
it's so lucky in the spring.
Really, oh my God, it's such a blessing to get your kids in and be able to put them in the weight room. They're eating college diets. They're going to be able to play, lacrosse or, softball, whatever the sport is in the spring. They're able to play with college age kids in environments that, hey, we don't have a game tonight, or it's just a scrimmage. But they get 6 months of being a college athlete, being a college student, learning the ins and outs before you actually ask them to help you win a game. Well, you just said it yourself. My guys are going to check in, and I'm going to ask them to help me win a game that could make or break me making the NCAA tournament before they even take a test. Some of them, before they even have like a quiz or something, some big assignment. I mean, a lot of these kids, we're playing on September 1st. They checked in a week earlier, and I mean, they're still learning teachers' names and how to get to class and stuff. And I say, hey, I need you to help me win this game. I know you've been a college student for 6 days and you've been a soccer player for 12, but we need to win this game. It's really a tough ask. And you said the best thing. You want them to be as fit as they've ever been and then keep going. You want them, hey, by like mid-July, get as fit as you've ever been, and then now try to push through that to get a little bit more fit, just so you could see it and arrive and not have to worry about that part of it. We recruit good soccer players. We know you're going to be able to play soccer at our place. Just don't put yourself in a situation where you're now behind. You're not fit. So some schools are having these fitness tests that make you pass the test before you can train or before you get a jersey. And you don't want to miss 3 or 4 practices because you can't pass the fitness test, or you don't want to barely get through it, find yourself really pushing because you're just not fit enough. And then you're going to push, hurt yourself, miss 2 weeks, season's going to begin. And I'll tell you what, I get 3 or 4 games in, and especially if we won those games, you're now behind everybody, and you're climbing a mountain that you're just not going to get out of. You rarely see a kid that's a freshman struggle mightily early on and then help you big time at the end. It's just such a tall order. And then now you're dealing with the kid who's there, who's very unhappy, might even be their fault probably, but now you got a whole different can of worms. And so it's a tall ask. And when we were in COVID, we had that big gap where we didn't play. We kind of got a taste of that.
Yes.
I was like, oh man, my kids got to work out, got to be college students, even though it was a COVID version of it. They weren't thrown into the fire immediately. And those kids, once we finally were able to start training and start practicing for actual games, they were not freshmen anymore. They were sophomores. They'd already had 6-8 months together, and it was a whole different type of kid. There's such different kids 6 months after you get them. It's really an amazing thing. I wish we could have some time with these kids before they start playing.
Yeah, you hit on so many important things there that I don't think freshmen necessarily realize, right? The incoming players. If you go down for 2 weeks, like you said, September 1, you probably missed 4 games.
4 games.
You're probably only playing 16 or 18, a quarter of the season. It might not even be 2 weeks. It might even be like you're playing Wednesday, Sunday, or Thursday, Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, and you get hurt the Wednesday before. It might be 9 days, but it's 4 games, And now somebody's stepped in. If you put yourself behind the 8 ball, because fitness was that reason. Now that was a trust thing, right? Like, am I trusting that you've done the things that you're responsible for over that? And then you talk about we're trying to get you to win games, and we go back to the portal and Power Fives and higher levels than where I'm at. Winning, they have to win to continue their job, and they probably like their job, And again, I'm not them, and I don't mean to speak for them. So take what I'm about to say with a few grains of salt. But like, if you're not helping us win, then we're focused on the 18 that are helping us win. And then maybe feel that's when people are, they don't like me, they don't care about me. Like, I'm sure that's not the case at all. But we've got a very short period of time to focus on getting this team ready, and that's these 18. Your time might come in the spring. You're going to have to wait, and the people that do that, I think, find a lot of joy in their long-term joy, not short-term happiness. I'm unhappy right now, so I want to go. But
Right.
when you fought through the perseverance, and Mike touched on that before about the short-term gratification and stuff like that. But some of the people I'm most proud of are the people that didn't start to play until they were seniors and became captains because they were able to fight through that. But they were just at a different part of their development. They needed more time. So I think everyone's got to realize that they've been playing. If they were really good, they were probably like one of the best players on their high school teams from like their freshman year, right? If they're playing Division I soccer, most likely, not always. And club soccer is everybody's the same age. They haven't really had any time in their life where they've got to go compete with bigger, stronger, faster, older, more mature, all that kind of stuff, and it can smack you in the face pretty quick. It's like, Mike Tyson, right? Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And they have a thought of what it's going to be like until they step in there and figuratively get smacked, or literally get smacked. Not the face, but hit on the tackle.
Yeah, I remember I was actually thinking about this kid yesterday. I was in the car, and we had this kid he's now a bodybuilder in Miami. I mean, the kid, he walks off the bus, and you're like, oh, why'd they bring their right guard with them to play from the football team? And the kid was massive, but just a complete Adonis. Soccer was fine, he was okay, but he found success because he was just a big, mean dude. And I was thinking about the first, because we're prepping for season, and I'm wondering what the first day is going to look like. And I was thinking about this kid that we had brought in as a freshman, and he was a good-sized young man and pretty good athlete and strong. And he came in, and day one, the first thing we did, he's a center back dealing with this Adonis of a human being posting up against him. And I'm just sitting there laughing because I'm looking at this child to deal with this 22-year-old. And the child is he might have been like the third biggest guy on the team already as a freshman, but he was just like, oh, this is way different than anything I'd ever experienced. And he was spinning him around, and you could just see the kids just like grabbing on for dear life. He's thinking the season's over after just one training session. And it was just funny to watch the difference between a freshman and a senior there, a kid that's dialed in and fit and gone through the process, and a young guy who was confident and fit and did a good job, but just like you just said, he got punched in the face and was not ready. Like, he was like, okay, he grew up a ton in 5 minutes in that game. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, Mike, what do you do in a situation like that where like you see an incoming player, a new player, whatever, young player, get kind of run over a little bit in their first, portion of their career? Is it kind of I'm going to put my arm around that player and talk them through it, or I guess it depends on their personality too, but I'll let you answer the question. I think you know where I'm going with it, but how do you deal with that, and how do you read what kind of person the player is?
I think it takes time. I think it takes a high degree of emotional intelligence to understand your players, and they're in your system now, and they're in your setting. So I think just really engaging with your first years, I think is overly critical, because you're used to your returners. You kind of have an idea, what makes them switch and how to get under their skin, and what they need to, hit the next level. So I think it's just a matter of trying to read as much body language as you can, and just being, understand them, to have perspective. I think Coach Brendan, talked about that, just because I think a lot of players think because of the back they come in that they're going to come in and the player, because that's what they have been in the club and high school setting. And it's just this talent funnel that just continues to come into the college world. And so there's very few freshmen that I think come in that make the impact they probably expected or thought they would make. I think it's important to kind of be there and be the edge, so that they can be successful in their role. And their role is obviously different, per play.
So let's go ahead. You're good for me. Yep. It definitely helped. Appreciate that. So let's back it up and talk about like when kids initially start reaching out to you. What's important, what's differentiating them, and what kind of catches your attention and that sort of thing. I always ask this of just about everyone, but it's important to hear it from different perspectives. So yeah, Mike, if you want to go, just talk about, when kids initially make contact and then how the process works for you.
I think it's really important to see if there's an actual genuine interest. And I think over time, it's a two-way street, in my opinion, with this recruiting process. So as you get further along the road, as personal as you can make it, better, in my opinion. Like, why is that player interested in our program? No different than why are we interested in that player or our program? And so I think trying to be as persistent in your communication, a great tool, certainly something that Brendan and I talk with our players on the club side. And it kind of helps us to see the personal side of the player, because I think there's certain nuances that we look for, whether it's quickness, whether it's decision making, technical ability. There's obviously a potential need as an outside back. So all of that is, that's pretty blah. It's the X's and O's that we look at. And so I think the process and how a player manages that process allows us to see the inside of what that person is. So, I particularly love seeing the interactions that prospective student athletes have with their parents on a visit or at a showcase, because again, how they treat a parent very well might be how they treat a teammate, and certainly how they might treat staff. So what are they doing the second that they see a parent? They walk away, from their coach. And that can be viewed in a variety of ways. How they deal with officials, coaches. How do they deal with being taken out of a game? What type of support do they give, on the sidelines? So I think those are all different things that most of the time it doesn't catch your eye, but there are outliers positively or negatively.
Yeah, Brendan, you have anything to add to that one?
The genuine interest is I think that's really easily done, even just by like for us specifically, right? Like, we're in New York City. We have some pretty specific majors. I think one of the things that always kind of throws me the other way is when someone says they want to major, they're really excited to major in something we don't have. I'm like, well, all right, we just got to do some research there. That shouldn't come here if we don't have the two things that you're interested in, no matter how good I think you are. If you have video, you should definitely send video. The video should actually be highlights and not just things that happened. That might sound like the most obvious thing in the world, but if you send a highlight video and there's nothing that actually stands out on it, our thought is that, if these are your highlights, they're not all that good. So that should be the case. They don't have to be like a million goals or the world's best passes or whatever. Just, very specific to speed of play, that kind of stuff. One of the things I like to ask players in our club is what is your thing? That you can head the ball, you can strike a ball really well, you're very fast, you're very intelligent, you play very, you play very quickly. You can, whatever that is, highlight that. However you can highlight that, whether it's actual video or not, but what's the thing that's going to make you stand out? Because we all don't need great overall players. Sometimes we need a great header of the ball. Sometimes we need a great 1v1 defender, because, Mike, I hope it's all right to say this, but coaches like Mike at schools like us, we're not getting the best players, right? We're not getting Power 5, Penn State, UNC, UCLA players. That's not a knock on any of them. They're great people who work very hard and want to be the best they can. But we have specific needs, and that sort of thing might be the thing that we need. So there's always the very general, not general, but obvious things, like make sure you put your number, all that kind of stuff. So we go to a field, we can actually find you and know who you are. But the last thing I would add is your grades. It's just for me, grades don't tell me how smart you are. They tell you how mature, responsible, and driven you are. Because you're doing your work, you want to do very well, And most people who are those things are that way on the field, as well as in the classroom. They're less management for us. None of us got into this job to be managing the academic careers of everybody else, but it's a major part of the job. And so the less we have to do that, the less we have to worry about what type of person you are. And I think your grades show that in terms of, again, just responsibility, maturity, how well you're driven. And then, to be honest, so someplace like us, right, I need people to get academic scholarship dollars so that I can extend my scholarship dollars. Because, again, I'm not fully funded. So if I've got two players and one needs $60,000 to come here, or, they both need $60,000 to come here, and one's going to get 30 academically, then she's the one who's coming because I'm only got to give her 30 athletically. So much as they're the same general soccer player, right? So now I've got $30,000 to bring in another player instead of having to give 60 to this person. So, it'll pay off. Like, literally, that's what I say. Like, the work pays off.
Yeah.
To do that.
For sure. Let's talk a little bit about culture and Brendan, you've been there for 13 years, right?
Yeah, 13 full years, going into my 14th season now.
Yeah. Mike, you've been there quite a few years at this point, right? 6, 7 years. Is that right?
Going into my 7th.
Right. So you've established your guys' culture very well, and obviously, it's working and that sort of thing. So how do you gauge whether a player is going to fit into your culture, and what should they be communicating to you to let you guys know that they will fit in, but also how should they be evaluating you and that sort of thing? I guess judging from both sides whether or not they're a fit for what you guys are trying to do. Mike, if you want to take that one first.
I think the more time that they spend with our players, us and them, I think that it does help players understand that we might not be the right fit for them, and which is great. I think that's a great thing to figure out in a process and actually check off a school that you're not interested in anymore. But I do think that, Brendan mentioned it earlier, is being able to kind of have players that take that charge in a way. So whether it's they're texting, following each other on social media, but I think just being able to bridge the gap with our current players, with recruits, is directly connecting them with our culture. Because the time that they get at our clinic, it's good, but it's limited. And so the ability that they might have maybe during like an overnight visit, super helpful, very encouraging. It goes a little bit deeper than what you might get with a campus tour. But I think our players now have a very good sense of the type of student, type of person that we're looking for. So they've been really good about identifying potentially any red flags, and even have just said, without me soliciting, that asking if they're coming here. They have a pretty good gauge of what works and what doesn't.
I would follow up again, just completely reinforce the relationship between recruit and player as early as possible. So that's after a visit and they spend some time. I'm going to go first thing I'm going to do is back to our players and say, what do you think? Do you think they fit in with who we are? Because I think because I'm not there, I very specifically try and have the players and meet the recruits when I'm not around, so they don't feel like they've got to give the right answer, or the players can ask whatever kind of questions. Like, because I'll step away and I'll get responses back from my players. Like, the first thing she asked us about, like, how often we go out and what like the nightlife is like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad that was the first question. We can just move on from there, then, right?
Yeah.
So like that kind of thing will happen. Culture is. I made this mistake. 2015. We went to our first. We were second in the conference. Made the playoffs for the first time. Went to the conference final for the first time. In a lot of ways, it was the program's best year. And I had this thought in my head, like, okay, that's set. Like, the culture's set now.
Yeah.
I can just go focus more on this tactical stuff. And of course, that culture was set by a senior class, who was my first fully developed recruiting class, and they were now gone. And now, so like a quarter of the team is gone, and a quarter of the team is new, and they're not the same people. So even though like I have the culture that we want. It's never set, and that was a hard lesson for me to learn. And you're constantly learning that. Another great thing though is when players ask me about culture specifically. It doesn't happen often, but they'll ask, well, what's the culture like? What's all this? What's all that? And I got a lot of stuff that I can just give them right away. And I know that they're thinking about that and not like, is there enough grass on campus, or like, what's the color of your uniforms, or things that get brought up and are like, oh, I like this color better. They're like, yeah, that sounds like the world's worst reason to make a decision, but whatever you need. So, that kind of stuff. Like, what is actually important, and are you actually bringing them up? And now I know you're focused on important things. At least I know that.
Isn't that a funny question? I mean, when a kid asks you what's the culture like, I always wonder, is there a coach out there that's like, holy crap, our culture's terrible, man. I mean, you're gonna help it out. Like every coach is gonna be excited about it, and so even though we all know that it's not the way it is, but I think you hit the nail on the head there, Brendan. Culture is something you have to work on every single day, and it's super easy after a big win. You got a bunch of players in the game, and it's a fun bus ride home. You snagged a big bowl of Chipotle with cheese and guac, as my guys prefer. And I mean, who's not happy in that moment? Versus like what happened to us. We had a 6-hour bus ride after a super disappointing overtime loss, and I wanted to kill somebody after I dropped a huge thing of water on my foot. That was when culture was really tested. And, that was a fun phone call for my wife talking about like, hey, what else can I do for a living? Because I'm about to kill out here. So, it's a daily battle, and it's really tested in and out of your training sessions, in and out of a tough week where you had 2 tests, 3 papers due. And, oh, yeah, by the way, we were on the road 2 of those days. And, you didn't get to go out with your friends. You didn't have any time other than the dining hall. When were you social? That's when it's really punching you in the face, and how are you handling it? And, we like to talk about our alums and, retention rate, grad rate, and about how people are always staying. They want to come back. They love it here. They graduate here. We have a bunch of weddings that we attend. I mean, that's like one of my favorite things about this job is getting invited to an alum wedding and seeing another like 15 guys that you used to coach that are there. And some of them are standing up there at the altar as groomsmen, and it's a really cool thing. And so that's kind of where we go with our answers with that. But it's at the end of the day, you said it best, Brendan. You have to work on it every single day, every day. And once you got to figure it out, that means you better get ready, because that means a curveball's coming your way, and you better be ready for it. So, it's a daunting thing. You want to keep your locker room happy at all times, and it's not easy.
Not easy. Especially the larger your roster is, the harder it is too. That's it. Again,
a lot of different personalities there.
Have you guys found that there's a certain kind of balance between you influencing the culture and your players influencing the culture? Like, do you feel like a sense of pride when you see your players influencing or carrying on the culture, that sort of thing? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's trying to read the room, read the room with what, Cheesy, talk about it like that. What does your team need after that next long bus ride overtime loss? And sometimes that might be a coach, and sometimes that might be player led. So I think it's trying to balance that throughout a season, because I think, we can tackle every situation the same way, but it only works once or twice. So I think it's just where you have a really great leadership group and be able to kind of tackle these things so that you can keep moving forward in the right direction.
Yeah, I just talking about your own personal growth and development in the profession. I was hired here at 29, and now I'm 43. And at 29, I didn't have a kid, and I didn't want to be anyone's dad. I just wanted to coach soccer, and that's what I was here for. Let's go win. And now it's almost the exact opposite. Like, I understand enough about the randomness of the game and who happened to slip at what point, and that's the only thing that cost you a one goal win versus a 1-goal loss. And it's like, I've been to 2 finals. We've been to playoffs again, all for the first time in program history. And, whether I win or lose, my kid still loves me and my wife still loves me. And what matters more long-term is what's happening with these players. So when, I get a text or an email from someone asking for a letter of recommendation to go be in the New York Bar Association, and she's still calling me 4 years later afterwards for that letter of rec. I'm like, okay, something positive happened, or even from the player who didn't play hardly at all, and was just like, all those standards you held me to that I was pissed about you all the time for, yeah, they're holding them to me here now too in this job, and I'm ready for them because of that. So, like, that's the kind of stuff I'm like, yeah, you know what, that's going to matter a whole lot more than a win, in a game.
Yeah, I talk about these whenever we're together with our alums. You walk around and you're seeing guys that are married now that have kids, and their life is completely different than it was when they were in your locker room. But you walk around and you listen to the conversations. You're kind of like overhearing what they're talking about. And every time I'm around my guys, my alums, and it's been a while since I've seen them or whatever, you know what the number one thing they don't even like? We don't even bring up the soccer. We don't bring up any of the games. We don't bring up any of the big wins. Like that was all great. And we had a few of those while we were here, but they're all talking about a bunch of other things that had almost nothing to do with soccer. I mean, I guess the locker room or the bus trip would consider that a soccer event, but they're talking about everything else besides the soccer. And that really kind of shows you what their experience really is like. And, we're talking about in the beginning where these kids are making decisions, and here's the reality. You're going to graduate, you're going to move on. And the soccer was just kind of a different reason why you were there. Your memories are going to include so many other things that have nothing to do with soccer. And so, to tie it back into this whole recruiting process, if you make a decision for just the soccer reasons, you're asking for trouble. I mean, you really are. I mean, the culture is critical. You got to like the coaches, you got to like the players, you got to like the location, and ask all the tough questions. Ask all the questions that lead to your total experience, not just, hey, coach, when am I going to play? Like, what's the total experience going to be? Because when you're 40 and you're at a wedding and you're shooting the bull, and those are the memories. That's everything you're going to talk about. It's not going to be the soccer.
Super important stuff. I mean, that just speaks to doing your homework on the front end before you even write a coach, and understanding what the school's all about, and all that good stuff. So let's talk a little bit about ID camps. Shifting gears here. What kind of value do you guys put on that? And do you typically find players at ID camps? Do you benefit from seeing players there that have already interacted with you, and that sort of thing?
I put tremendous weight on them. I think it's, the ones that buy the institution, I think, are really kind of where you get the most bang for your buck. You're on their campus, you're engaging with their athletes. We try to mix in and obviously have our committed kids attend when they can. We have one this upcoming week. It's not the end all be all, but it's just like one of those really important pieces that I think allows you to see an inside look at a program. Yeah, the coach is obviously working with their players and it's a style that fits you, and then really get another chance to engage with the current student athletes that are there. So I think it does have its place, but the third party camps and clinics, I think, are a little bit different environment, and you're certainly not on a college campus typically. And so that might not be as productive, my personal professional opinion on that. But I do think that they're a really good part of the process, not the entire.
Yeah, I think, going back all these years, we've got a lot of players that have come through our clinics. We try and keep them, 25 to 40 people, so we can know them. We can really know them, and get to know them. I've had people we don't have even different colored pennies with numbers on them to try and ID them, because I want to go around and immediately say you're Susie, Mary, Jill, because we know their name, from that. So I think another way to look at it, though, is you're spending 6 hours within the program. So talking about culture, what the players are like, what they expect, all that kind of stuff. You're getting to know that right away. So not only are we getting to see you in a regular training environment and then a game and all that kind of stuff. Most people, I think, have their players work. Most coaches have their players work clinics. So we'll have however many we have there, and they're getting around, they're talking to people, they get a sense of what they're like, and at the end of each of them, they're like, don't let that kid come here, or this kid's awesome. Can you sign her right now? So it's as much, again, from a culture aspect, I think they're important as well when you're on campus and you're interacting directly with players.
Cheese, got anything to add there?
I mean, we just had ours this past weekend, and you're able to coach a kid. Like, what other event can you go coach this kid you're about? You're thinking about bringing in. You get to actually throw information at them and see how they respond, and really challenge them or move them, put them exactly where you want to put them, and we'll live and try to play the way that we want to play and see how they fit into that. Maybe they're a kid that thinks they're one position, and well, in our formation, we like them in a different position. So we get to test them in those exact roles and not have to wait till they're here to see if it's going to work. But I mean, the reality is they're telling you as much as you can see. I mean, they're signing up for your camp. They're coming to see you. They're on your campus. I mean, it's such a win. It's a really a telling thing. It's funny when you get an email from a kid like, "Hey, I'm attending the CNU ID camp. Are you going to be there? I'm really excited about you being there." I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm putting the clinic on. I guess I'll be there for a little while. I'll come watch you play a little bit, buddy." But they were so nervous. They wanted to make sure you were there. I'm like, all right, well, I'll put a little value into that, I guess. But no, I think they're critical. It's, I guess it can be daunting for families at times. Some of these ID camps you see, and they can be quite expensive, or you're traveling all over the world. And I mean, we had this past camp, we had a couple of kids from Korea, and they're going to go to like 10 more in a month. And I mean, how much is that going to cost? My goodness, I hope the kid finds a good home, maybe gets a few bucks to make up for it. But they're critical. There's a reason why all of us do it. I mean, they really are, and they're very important for the whole process, from in the locker room to on the field, and we have to keep.
Cool. That's really insightful. Thanks, guys. So I got, well, and maybe on this one, I got this question from a listener, actually. Makes me feel big time when I get a question from a listener. But Cheese knows about this and has helped me answer it a little bit, but I'd be curious to see what you guys think. So the question was, how do college coaches feel about or view consultants or recruiting advisors contacting a school on the player's behalf?
That's an interesting question. So like most questions, it depends. Domestic kids, American kids, I generally don't like it. I want to immediately know why they're not contacting me directly. Do you just not want to do this? So you're just paying somebody else to just send emails out to everybody? I feel like there's enough information in the club environment, and just Googling things like these kind of podcasts and your club coaches and stuff like that. And then, to be honest, like, I think some of those services are just, they're there to make profits, right? They're there to make money. So they're taking whoever and then trying to, send them to every college. They're just, they're essentially fishing. A lot of them are. There are some that'll just like host your profile and your video, and that's fine. I mean, I've got no problem with that kind of thing. But now international kids, it's a little bit different because they're not in the system. They might not know how the process works, and they might not speak the language and all that kind of stuff. So they're paying for a consultant to kind of help them through that process that might not be as available to them because it's so different in Europe and Asia and South America and things like that. So that's kind of my take on it. I won't automatically dismiss it, but there's a few grains of salt, right away that, like, especially when, there's not even like a follow-up from the player directly. It's just like, someone else is going to take care of that for me. I don't want to do it. I just want somebody else to take care of it for me, and hopefully it'll work itself out. But, a big phrase I use all the time with our players at college, players at club, is own it. Own your development, own the process. This is yours. It's not somebody else's to do for you with you giving them a little bit of information. And that way I've got a sense that when you get here, you're going to continue to own it. It's yours. You don't think it's somebody else's responsibility to do. So that's my general take. It might be biased. It might not be fair. Some people might just not know, and it's the only way they can get help. And if that's the case, like I said, then it's fine. Like I said, I don't just automatically dismiss them, but that's my initial take on it.
It's not genuine, and so much different than, if it's a club coach that's sent us a couple players and they know how those players' experience have been, and they have another player for you in the future. I mean, it's completely different, in that regard. But if it's yes, just somebody acting as a sports agent essentially. It's how genuine do they know our program? Like how authentic is it? And I think they're trying to fish as much as they can to find a school that they can help them out. And I just thought that would lead to the right type of placement for a player.
Just to add another kind of, it's not necessarily consultants, but anybody who's reaching out on behalf of a player. This might sound like I'm trying to be too whatever about Manhattan College, right? But like I've gotten the line of this kid, whoever Susie can play. I think Susie can play anywhere in the country. Well, if Susie can play anywhere in the country, she shouldn't come to Manhattan College. She should go to Stanford or Duke or Harvard or Yale or any one of those other schools. Yeah. That's where she should go. If she should go anywhere, if she can play anywhere in the country. Right. Like let's be a little bit like if you're gonna write something like club coaches out there, and if you're gonna reach out for somebody, be specific and be realistic, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean you have to be brutally honest. It just be specific and like the kid's very fit. Like she could play 90 minutes against ECNL teams. Okay, now you said a sentence, and now I've got an example of what you think that means. Like, all right, now that's different. Like, take some time and don't say general platitudes that make the kid sound great, or say silly things like she should play anywhere in the country when then you're writing it.
Yeah, I get pretty frustrated when I see these emails outside of the ones where I can first press reply and speak directly to the kid. I hate the ones where I have to fish through the entire email, find a link, make a profile. I mean, I got to delete it. But if I can press reply to at least talk to the kid and there's video attached that I can quickly access, and some of these have pretty cool ones where it's got the arrow or it pauses and lights the kid up. I'm like, okay, cool. And I know what I'm watching. And, within a few seconds, I can see if there's something that I want to, pursue here. That I can kind of get, but most of them are the opposite of that. Most of them are complete fishing expeditions. I told the story at we ran one of these at our ID camp, how my first experience, one of these emails came through, this kid from Texas. I'm like, man, this kid's fantastic. He's going to kill it for us. And he wrote us. I'm still excited. Reach out to the kid. And, the kid was like, I don't even know what a Christopher Newport is. Like, is that your name? Where are you? He didn't know anything about us. And he was like, I'm sorry, coach. I just filled out a profile, and I get emails all the time from schools I've never heard of or I don't have nothing to do with. And I quickly just deleted all the emails from that service from there on out. And yeah, I think there's something to it for an international kid, or if you're like in the middle of nowhere and you're on a soccer team and you're never going to get any exposure, I can absolutely understand trying to find some sort of help. That makes a lot of sense. I had this weekend, actually, I felt terrible for this guy, for his family. I'm sitting there, we're watching some soccer, and a dad walks up to me, taps me on my shoulder and goes, "Hey, coach, are you Justin?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I want to thank you. That's my son over there. I want to thank you for offering him a spot." And I'm like, "Who's your son? What did I do? I don't know what you're talking about here." And he gave me his name, told me the company that I supposedly was speaking to that I had offered a spot through, and I'd never heard of the kid, never heard of the company. And this dad is sitting there going like, yeah, you offered him a spot. Another school president at our camp wanted to see more out of the kid. They wanted to be specific about a left foot or something. So I just walked over to that coach and asked if that was true. The guy goes, I have no idea who this guy is either. And I'm just sitting like, I had to go to the dad. I said, I got to be honest with you. I would go talk to this guy and see exactly where the conversations are coming from. You can email me directly and show me what I supposedly said, but I have no idea who your kid is. This guy has no idea who your kid is. And these are two spots you were supposedly offered. And, if you had just showed up on my campus to come practice that first day, I would have been completely blown away. I have no idea who you were. I felt terrible for him. And this is just basically all of our fears coming to light right in front of me. And I'm like, oh, this is not a good situation. I don't want to call anybody out or anything here, but I bet you that's more common than not. I mean, it's a sad situation, and I felt terrible for this kid.
Yeah. So like Brendan said, own it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Own your stuff. Do it yourself.
My favorite recruiting database is gmail.com. That is a fantastic database. You can send me stuff through that, and use Google to search Manhattan College before you write Coach Lawler an email, please.
Yeah. So last thing, we're guys are getting ready to start preseason. At what point do you guys like get excited and like your love of soccer? Not that it ever left, but like when is it reborn? Like everyone has that preseason. I can't wait for the season to start thing kick in. When does that kick in for you guys?
I mean, so we've been lucky to have our club teams do very well this year in USU soccer, and um, so in that sense, we were a little bit more deeply involved this year, Mike, than in past. But um, I came back from vacation in the middle of July and was like, okay, it's been long enough. Let's get going. Um, I do think the break is actually really good. I wouldn't have said that 10 years ago either. But maybe it's a kid, maybe it's just being older. I think everybody needs that time away to refresh. Where I would want to be like, all right, I got a day. Let's get into planning. But I think mid July, like you're getting a little bit into the doldrums. Let's get this stuff going.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's probably today. It's the day that August comes. You just know everything that happens in this month between players arriving, your first fitness test, your first couple scrimmages. I mean, there's so many kind of monumental moments. So it's not necessarily one. I think it's just the idea of like, let's get ready and rocking. I mean, July is kind of the camp and vacation month, and August is starts your season.
Hey,
I know you hate your job, so never mind.
I've got a 4-week-old, so
Wow.
I'm just kind of like sitting there, like, why did I do this right before the season started? I need to sleep. I need to be ready to go. But I think for me, a lot of my guys are starting to trickle in. The guys that live off campus, and some of the ones that do the year-round housing. So I'm starting to see my guys. We just wrapped up some camps, and it's as soon as you start to see your players, you can really like, oh, okay, it's time to get back in the locker room. It's time to have some fun here. I mean, at the end of the day, none of us are getting rich doing this. So we do actually enjoy what we're doing. And it's all because of the kids, and it's all because of the time we get to spend with them. And so, when you get to start to see them coming in, that's when I get really, really excited. Hey,
Cool.
Brennan and Mike, so Brennan, you're at a private D1 school,
Yep.
and Mike, state D3 school. We've got, Scott can tell you, we've had some people all over the country. And I was actually talking to this guy from Asia that listened to the podcast. So we're starting to, I don't think we're on Joe Rogan status yet, but we're going to probably be second or third here soon.
Nice.
But, let's say there's a girl that's interested in the New York area. You guys want to give like a quick spiel about your school just so they have a pretty good understanding as to what they'd be getting into, and maybe they'll start reaching out.
Yeah. So I mean, Manhattan College, as we said before, it's actually it's in the Bronx, a very residential area. We talk about it being the best of both worlds. There's a subway at the base of our dorms that'll take you right straight down Broadway and into Manhattan and everything it has to offer. But it's not within the urban jungle. It's up in a nice beautiful place across from a beautiful park and lots of grass and being able to get out there. So if you're not sure if you want the big city, you don't have to be in the big city all the time. It's got fantastic academics, fantastic engineering program, athletes that go into exercise science and physical therapy and that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, we talk about return on investment for how much school costs, and we're often ranked in the top 25, top 50 in the country for value of degree and salaries as we come out there. And from the soccer program, we're one that we're underdogs. We're blue collar types. We've got to overcome not being the most funded program, but we come here and we work hard and we play soccer. And I think for me, at the end of the day, when people tell me that they love their time here and they really grew and developed, I think there's a lot more people like that than, as you said, 9 people leaving to get into the portal or something like that. There's people see here and they see the value of everything, both athletics and academics, and the people in the community. Living in New York City and getting that kind of experience, which might be the only time in your life you're able to afford living in a city like this. So to be able to experience that can be great to expand your horizons.
Yeah, I'd say for New Paltz, we talk a lot with our players about becoming the best versions of themselves. And so that's, if that's something that somebody's interested in, I really think we have a pathway to make that happen. The town of New Paltz, it's it's eclectic. It's super vibrant. It's small, but it's right off the position of it. I mean, it's right off the thruway. It's a great spot. I mean, if you really enjoy the outdoors, there's endless things to do. The campus is gorgeous. Academically, it's one of the finer SUNY schools. So we put ourselves on a little bit higher pedigree from an academic standpoint. So I mean, SUNY, it's the same price tag across the board. So why not go to the better school? Education, STEM fields are really growing. Business. So yeah, there's a lot to choose from. But I think our players really, they love the overall community on campus, off campus, and I think it allows them to, or become the best version of themselves. And it's a great group of ladies to work with.
Brendan, I noticed you had a bracelet on. I've got my, I should have cut this off when I left the hospital, but this is my newborn's. It's ripping. It's going to go soon. And my wife usually will make colorful little rope bracelets for me, but they fade and go. I mean, what do you got? What are we working with
so
there?
This is just beads. My daughter's 5. She made it in daycare.
There it is. There it is.
And I'll tell you, I like to wear it, to be honest with you, and that might shock anyone who's known me for more than 10 minutes. Since I didn't wear my wedding ring for the first 2 years, but we don't get into that right now. Yeah, if I take it off for something and she sees it's not on, she goes and gets it and gives it right back to me. So it's a nice little reminder throughout the day. Yeah, I think it's it's just that just keeps me tethered.
Sure.
Yep.
That's why we're doing everything, right?
Yep.
My daughter made me something. I'm wearing it. No questions asked. No questions asked.
You said a 4-year-old girl, 4-week-year-old girl?
I've got a 5-year-old boy, a 3-year-old girl, and a 4-week-old. And I just got snipped, so I'm all done. Just shut down the factory 2 weeks ago. So, yeah, it's over. It's all over.
There you go.
Yep. Boys, anything else?
It's been fun. I appreciate you reaching out and doing it.
That was a great time.
I can't thank you enough. We need more representation of women's programs. So anytime you guys want to come on, you just let me know.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks
Appreciate
for having
it.
us.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Right.
It was great.
Thank you, fellas. Good luck this season.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Stay healthy. Good luck, guys.
You too.